Hey, what's up, everybody? Colt 45 here. Sorry it took me forever to get on this, really, to do a video on this. But I wanted to fully explore the game before I do that. Before I do this. But first, I'm going to show you all the stuff that I have on this game. Now, as you can see right here, I got a statuette. It has removable swords, so you can see here. Little gold thing comes off. The sword comes out like so. And now he's only holding one sword. It's actually pretty cool. I was actually really excited when I got this. And over here, you got an art book. It's really nice, actually. So you can see Shelquois, and I don't know who that is yet. No, it's a Milfinito. And of course, various NPCs and enemies and landscapes. It's just awesome stuff. Enemies. Yeah. And then we have the actual game, which is stylized. Yeah. Also comes with the soundtrack of the game. Really neat soundtrack, by the way. Really neat. And of course, the game itself. And oops. Alright. And if you can see the thing right there, that's actually a map. The only reason why I'm not bringing the camera everywhere is because it's actually charging while it's shooting. So that's what I pretty much got from the game. Now, how is the game itself? It's good. Really good, actually. But not as good as Dark Souls 1. Dark Souls 1 felt okay. I'm going to give the premise of the game first, before I actually explain the game. You are a chosen undead set forth on a journey to rid yourself from the curse of the dark side. Now, it sounds pretty similar to the first game already. And honestly, that's where it kind of highlights in a little bit, because it's pretty much, the point it's getting at is that it's a cycle. That's a continuous cycle that's just going to keep going on and on and on till the dawn of, till the end of time. Now, the Dark Souls 2 felt a lot more Demon Souls-esque in that you don't really go off and all the worlds don't really connect to each other. It's more of like Wolverine blades, where you just sort of pick right here and go up, pick right here and go up, pick right here and go up, until you get to the main game, and it just tailors you all the way on to the end of the game. Which isn't bad, I don't really mind it. And a lot of the biggest things is that, is it easier than Dark Souls? And it is. Really. Like, it's still difficult. Like, there's still some parts that are difficult. But a lot of the bosses are just a variation of some random ass guy in armor. Really. And a lot of it, a lot of the boss battles that are considered hard are more cheap than anything. Because there's other things in there in the boss battle. And they also recycled a lot of the bosses. Like the bell tower gargoyles. Really, it's there in Dark Souls 1 and now it's here in Dark Souls 2, only there's an added twist to the bell tower gargoyles in Dark Souls 2. And that is that there's 6 of them. They don't fight you at once yet, at the beginning. Like, you attack one, and then another one pops out, and then you attack one, attack that another one, and another one pops out. It's really... It kind of made my head spin how that mechanic worked. Like, if you attack one, and then the other one spawns, and then you don't kill this one, then you attack the other one, then a third one will spawn. If you attack the one that just spawned, then more will spawn, and it keeps doing that until all 6 are there. However, this is kind of an optional boss because you don't really need the key, like this little key of the Lost Bastille. You don't really need it. It helps, but you don't really need it. Now, is it still as fun as Dark Souls 1? No. No. With Dark Souls 1, there's a lot of things that you can do, really. And I liked how you had to pick a build and stick with it. You wanted a dex build, stick with it. You wanted a strength build, stick with it. Now with this, you can start off as a dex build and end up being a quality build, or end up being a mage build. Because really, in Dark Souls 1, you can 50 like 1, maybe 2 stats. In this one, you can 53 of them. Which isn't bad per se, it just sort of makes the game a lot easier. And really, there are chances of the game getting, not chances, but there are instances where the game gets significantly easier. And that is, you can actually get a ring called the Ring of Life Protection. And you can wear it. And when you die, you still keep your souls, and you still keep human. Which is good, right? But the ring breaks, similar to the Ring of Sacrifice and Rare Ring of Sacrifice in Dark Souls 1. But here's the catch. You can actually repair the ring. It only costs 3,000 souls, which really, in this game, souls are everywhere. Like, you can just walk around, find a soul item, and there you go. You got enough souls to repair your ring. And the thing is, with New Game Plus, and if you use bonfire ascetics, which pretty much, you go to a bonfire, use a bonfire ascetic, and the bonfire ascetic pretty much sets the whole area in New Game Plus mode, but it doesn't put it in New Game Plus mode. All the enemies get harder, and they respawn, and all the items respawn, and there are some Black Phantoms here and there and whatnot, but the items, because in New Game Plus, the game changes pretty much. It only changes once, but it changes. And if you're a new game and you use Bonfire Ascetic, all the items that are available in New Game will respawn, not all the ones in New Game Plus. I could be wrong on that one, but it makes sense to me. Now, you can just use a Bonfire Ascetic and just keep farming everything. And really, you'll have your souls right there, and really bitch of it is that you can keep getting rings of sacrifice. My character that's been through the game 7 times, I've got 8 of them. So my souls aren't going anywhere, really. And it sucks. It does, because it really just casualizes the game. I hate using the term casual and casualizing because that's sort of offensive. Because really, they're like someone who's casual picks up and plays a game, really. And by casual, they just sort of play a game every once in a while. Whatever. They're playing games, so I don't really care. But really, this game, it would have fared better had it been named different. It would have fared better. It would have fared well as a Souls game, like part of the Souls series. But it would have been better had it been called something else. It's sort of like Castlevania Lords of Shadow. It's a great game in its own right. Had it been named something else, would have made it tons better. Like, honestly, I would have just named this game Dragon Souls. That would be a lot better. Dragons do play a huge role in the lore and in the game. In the second half, but they do. But I don't know. I honestly don't know what name I would fare it as, but the strongest one is probably Dragon Souls. However, with that said, the lore in this game is heavily dependent on the lore in Dark Souls 1, which really, though interesting and though I do like it, you betrayed us from software. Sorry, I'm kind of flustered. Really, it's not the game's fault. No, it's not. They had a new director. From Software had a new game director. And Hidekita Miyazaki, I probably butchered his name, but sorry. But Miyazaki was off doing something else and agreed to supervise it. He was off doing Bloodborne, which is coming out in 2015 that I'm really excited for. And it's the reason I want to get a PlayStation 4. But he was off doing Bloodborne, and some other guy was doing this game. They promised us different lore. They promised us that it's like in the same universe, but in a different location. Like, the same universe as Dark Souls 1, where Lordran, oh wait, I can actually pull a direct quote. They said that if Lordran were to happen on the North Pole, Dark Souls 2, or Drangleic, in this game, were to happen in the South Pole. That's what they said. But no. Spoiler territory. No. The ultimate kicker is that Drangleic was Lordran. The Old Iron King was Gwyn the Lord of Cinder. The Lost Sinner was the Witch of Izalith. The Duke's dear Freya was Seath the Scaleless, which really doesn't make much sense to me, and I'll tell you why. As you can see, there are holes in the lore, which, like, huge ones too. Fuck, man. And I always forget this one. Oh, and the Rotten was Gravelord Nito. Now, the Nito, the Witch of Izalith, and Gwyn makes sense to me. The Duke's dear Freya being Seath the Scaleless doesn't. Here's why. The whole idea is that their souls occupy bodies, like different bodies. Like in the case of Gwyn, it was the Ignatius Earth, I believe its name is, which is the old Iron King. And with the Witch of Izalith, it occupied the Lost Sinner, trying to recreate the flame, which was in Dark Souls 1. When the Witch of Izalith tried to recreate the flame and ended up unleashing demons and modifying her and her daughters' bodies into hideous formations, with a couple of exceptions. That's Quaylana and and a nameless sister that you find in the Ceaseless Discharge boss room. But the thing is, Seath the Scaleless never really had a powerful soul. Never really had a soul, like a Lord Soul. He had a fragment of a Lord Soul. This fragment was awarded to him by Gwyn for helping Gwyn out defeating the dragons in the times of the above and the below. Which is right around the time that the Age of Fire kicked in. So by that, it shouldn't be strong enough for his soul to pass on. And if so, what about the Four Kings? The Four Kings had a fragment of Gwyn's soul. So why weren't they? How come they haven't slipped through the fissures and occupied another vessel? Pretty much. I don't know. You tell me, Dark Souls 2. And another cool touch that I really liked in Dark Souls is that if you didn't have the stats to use a weapon, mainly strength and dexterity, I barely noticed the dexterity portion of it, but I notice it, is that you don't use your weapon correctly. You use your weapon a lot slower and becomes harder to swing. Like if you try to swing a sword in Dark Souls 1 that you didn't have the strength requirement, you would see it. You would see your character struggle to swing the sword and get thrown off balance and have to catch himself and then just pull the sword back and try to put it back on your shoulder. And with Dex weapons is that you go noticeably slower, you just sort of kind of swing it in these weird things, and that and your move set is kind of altered because you don't really have the Dex and you're not doing that much damage. In this game, it's like Demon Souls, where you use the weapon normally, albeit slowly, but you use the weapon normally. What bewilders me is how come I can take a weapon, how come I can have like 5 strength and take a weapon that requires 60 strength and still no, that didn't happen. Albeit it's very small and it's kind of a nitpick, but really it was little touches of those that worked in Dark Souls' charm. In this game, the weapons have gotten quote-unquote fair for PvP, really. And that's a big highlight in Dark Souls 2, is that PvP has gotten better. In Dark Souls 1, trying to get a summon was a bitch and a half. You usually had to spend donate 10 minutes of the game just trying to find somebody to help you when you can't finish a boss battle on your own. Excuse me. But in Dark Souls 2, you can't... summoning people is a lot easier, and consumes less time when there is a problem. And invasions have improved, so all you invaders out there will have an easier time invading somebody because you can be invaded when you're hollow now. In Dark Souls 1, you can actually go hollow to avoid invaders, and then be human just enough to summon somebody and then quickly dash to the boss. But by this time you usually open up all the shortcuts, and so invading isn't necessarily a point, isn't necessarily effective, because you're usually at the boss. And the cool thing is, slash bad thing, good for invaders, bad for people, is that even if you kill a boss in Dark Souls 2, you can still be invaded. And a lot of the covenants in this game are a lot more PvP oriented, which is really nice, and offers a covenant, it makes a covenant worthwhile to be in. In Dark Souls 1, you usually joined it because you really wanted a miracle, or you really wanted a spell, or you really wanted a pyromancy, and then you just sort of stopped. Granted, there are higher level miracles, or higher level miracles where you have to be in a covenant in order to use, like the Soul Spear like the Sunlight Spear in Dark Souls 1, where you have to be in the Heirs of the Sun Covenant in order to use it. You get 5 charges and it deals a lot of damage, which is really nice. But to my knowledge, you can actually use the miracles without being in the Covenant, which is nice. I really like that. But the most annoying Covenant to be in is the Rat Covenant in this game. That is, you wear a ring, you draw people into your world, and you set up traps, and you have the people try to kill you. Now, there is one instant, now there are 2 places actually, before I say what I have to say next. 2 places, and that is the Grave of the Saints and the Doors of Pharaohs. And it's really, the Doors of Pharaohs is kind of a place that's sort of obscure. Like, you go through the Doors of Pharaohs, but the PvP area is often a weird kind of obscure angle. You have to sort of notice the bonfire there in order to notice that there's an area there. And what's really annoying is that okay. Calm down. Okay. So, you go off, like if you get summoned into somebody else's world and they're trying to kill you, if you go to the boss fog and go through that fog, you get a Pharaoh's Lockstone, which is highly important because they open up specialized doors, and you get sent back to your world. Problem: I joined the Rat Covenant for a while. I wore the ring, and people came to my world. However, it is against your will whenever you come to a world. You will be roaming around, and then all of a sudden it says you are being summoned as a gray spirit. I have worn the ring. I've gotten people just rising up, going over to the nearest bridge, and rolling off because they just want to get back to their world and play their game. The most annoying covenant in the entire game is the Bellkeepers. Because one, it's the same idea as the Rat Covenant, but the roles are reversed. Because it's a sort of a vice versa. Instead of you drawing people to your world, whenever someone goes to a certain area, you get summoned, and you go to that area and invade the world of someone else, which is nice, because at the very least, it's ring activated. But if you are somebody that's wandering through the bell towers either to go through the Beltar gargoyles, or you're going through the Belfry Soul right next to the old Iron King. You can get an invader, which is fine, whatever, but on top of that, you usually have all these dark spirits around. Like you have dark spirit, like Bellkeepers. You will have the Mad Warrior in the Belfry Soul. You will have a couple of NPC phantoms. But that's not so bad. But here's the kicker. You can summon up to 2 Bellkeepers at a time. So if you're wandering through the Belfry Soul or the Belfry Luna, you can get 2 Bellkeepers on you. Which sucks. So bad. Okay, and the Heirs of the Sun is still probably the best Covenant. I highly recommend going through there because it's Covenant, it's a co-op based Covenant. So you just throw your sign down and get summoned. And really, that was the easiest one to level up in. That and the Pilgrims of the Dark Covenant, which is a really fun Covenant. And honestly, I highly suggest both, really. The Pilgrims of the Dark Covenant is a little bit tricky to get into, only because you have to find an NPC 3 times throughout the game. One in the Shaded Woods, one in the Black Gulch, and one in Drainway Castle. Okay, that's all the Covenants I can remember. There are other ones that do various PvP things, like the Brothers of Blood, which is really good. But honestly, the 2 ones that are kind of worthwhile if you are somebody like me who doesn't really like to invade people's worlds, it's the Pilgrims of the Dark and the Heirs of the Sun. Go out and check them out. Now I'm going to talk about some of the mechanics of the game, which are kind of iffy. Now the thing is with this game is that whenever you die, you lose a portion of your health, which on paper is harder, but once you get down to it, once you get a certain ring, and you can actually get it in the beginning of the game if you know where to go, it's not that bad. It's kind of like the Demon Souls soul ring, where whenever you die, instead of getting half health, you have 3/4 health, which makes a significant difference in Demon Souls, and it makes an even more significant difference here in Dark Souls 2. So really, that mechanic is kind of pointless, especially if you have the Ring of Life Protection. You keep your humanity wherever it is. So if you only died twice, and your health went from here to here, you can wear that ring and it's still going to remain here. But if you use a human effigy, it restores you back to human, and it's not like Dark Souls 1 where you need to go to a bonfire to revert to human, which I like. I really do. And I like a lot of the movesets of the weapons here, and I like the idea of the direct hit system being back into play here in Dark Souls 2. Now, for those of you who don't know, the direct hit system in Demon Souls was that if you were to hit somebody with a certain part of the weapon, i.e. if it's an axe, the blade part of the axe, it does a lot more damage than it would if you were to hit it with the handle or were to barely nick the guy on the edge of the axe, which I like. And this game, it brings back a lot more weapons can be turtled. And what I mean by turtling is that in Dark Souls 1, if you were to block with your shield and you had a rapier or a spear, you can actually go around the shield and stab. It's not meant to do significant damage, but it's meant to push the enemies off and stagger them so that way you can unblock and then keep going at it. And this in Dark Souls 2, you can actually turtle with rapiers, spears, and halberds. And they have a lot more strength weapons, and dex weapons aren't quite as broken. Pull up there.
Hope you're not naked. What's up with that?
Huh?
Is that your buddy looking at it?
No, that's a YouTube video.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Jeez. LSLC, check out the channel.
You know what? Not gonna cut that in. Not gonna cut that out. Go, that's my dad. Go watch his channel if you like guns and reloading and all that, and you want to see more of me. Check out LSLC. Mr. LSLC. Highly recommend it. Okay, back to business. Dex weapons in Dark Souls 1 were really broken, in that being that they almost toppled strength weapons to mere uselessness. They were obsolete. Where you can, in Dark Souls 1 and in Dark Souls 2, the strength weapons are meant to destroy targets with as little hits as possible. They're meant to deal with a lot of damage, but are usually very slow. Hence the term usually, which I'll bring up in a later argument. In Dark Souls 1, it's the same thing. But however, in Dark Souls 1, they had a lot more reach to them. In Dark Souls 1, like you can take a club, like a large club, and you can just sort of go out and slam down like that. In Dark Souls 1, you more lean it against your shoulder, and you just sort of let it fall, which really kind of sucks. And in my opinion, Dark Souls 2, for the builds I tend to go for, the hard-hitting strength weapons aren't really that worth it. In Dark Souls 1, they were kind of cool. They were kind of good. But dex weapons, if you have 50 dex, and you find the right weapons, you can seriously do all that damage, all the same damage as plus 15 large club, and have a faster moveset, and a really light carry, so you can fast roll with them. So really, there's no point to the strength weapons in Dark Souls 1. And in Dark Souls 2, they're meant for taking away all your stamina when people block. And that way you can do another critical that they added in Dark Souls 2, is that when your stamina depletes, you'll throw your shield to the side and stagger. And that's when the opponent can come up to you and attack, and they trigger a critical hit animation. Parrying in this game is almost useless. In PvP, it has a purpose. Anywhere else, it's kind of useless. Dark Souls 1 is where you can parry on reaction. Like if an enemy were to come and attack you, you can just and then do your riposte. In this game, it's a lot more slow. You have to plan it out, really. And it's all dependent on a stat called adaptability, which I'll get to later. But you come in and do your parry, and if you parry, the enemy will stagger, and you have to wait. You can't just walk up and riposte like you could in Dark Souls 1. You have to wait for them to put their hands and knees on the ground, and then you come up and stab them down. Now, the backstabs are a little bit different. However, they're a lot more responsive in Dark Souls 2 than they are in Dark Souls 1. Dark Souls 1, you had to come in at an angle. You couldn't be directly behind them. In certain cases you could, like if you were to circle around, but really you had to come in at an angle, which is kind of weird. But in Dark Souls 2, it's anywhere behind them, which is awesome. And what's kind of cool is that you take the end of your sword, you bash them, and they go down, and then you press R1 again, and you start doing the critical hit damage. And it's a 3 hit on regular weapons. Anything heavier is a 1 hit. And with and on technicalities, daggers and rapiers do like 2 hits. Now, when speaking of criticals, in Dark Souls 2, the critical hit and the best critical weapon is the dagger, or just a regular dagger. If you get it to plus 10, which is the maximum on any weapon, it's plus 10 in this game. Doesn't matter anymore. It's not through standard, elemental, raw, or mundane weapons, which I'll explain in a little bit. Plus 10, doesn't matter. And with the same materials. But in Dark Souls 1, it was the Bandit's Knife that had the highest crit modifier. So you can backstab or post or whatever, and pretty much win any PvP fight. Which kind of sucks. However, in this game, it's more so, because now it's just the dagger. So people will roll behind you and still backstab fish you. And it kind of sucks because that's all you pretty much see. Well, that's all I've seen. There's probably people out there that have used Zweihanders or used their bare fists or whatever, and that's totally fine. It's just I've only seen the dagger. Now, weapons. You can actually take any weapon and infuse it with whatever. Infuse it with poison. You can infuse it with dark. You can infuse it with faith, like not faith, divine. You can infuse it with anything, which is really cool. And I like yet I don't at the same time. What they did with this little mechanic, in that you don't have to have a weapon at a specific point to infuse it. You just walk in, doesn't matter what level your sword's at, and infuse it with something, which can be useful. But I don't feel that rewarded about it. It doesn't really feel that different to me, other than it's just going off a different scaling system now. Where it was going off of strength, now the strength modifier's been hatcheted in order to fit the dark modifier. And that kind of bothers me, but not that much. And another mechanic that I had an issue with is the stats. The stats read Vigor, Vitality, Adaptability, Dexterity, Strength, Intelligence, and Faith. I think that's it. Oh, and Endurance. And Vitality and Vigor are two different things, where in Dark Souls 1, Vitality was health, purely health. Demon Souls, it was health and in an item burden, which is you can carry more stuff in your inventory. And in Dark Souls 2, Vitality is strictly equipment load, and Vigor is health. Endurance is strictly stamina, and Adaptability is kind of my main... It's kind of my main peeve at this moment. Because in Dark Souls 1 you had Endurance, which was stamina and equipment mode. And you have Dexterity, which if you wanted faster casting... Oh, and another stat I forgot, Attunement. If you wanted faster casting, you'll see why that reminded me. is you wanted dex. Now, adaptability, it takes agility, which was in the network test, and it takes resistance and mashes them together. What I like about the adaptability stat is that one, it makes it a little harder, which I like, and I think is kind of necessary. Two, your armor scales off of it. So if you have Hovel's armor, it scales on adaptability, and you use your items a lot faster. Why I think it kind of sucks. It's unnecessarily hard. It's really just, I just use items a little bit less now. I can't use items as fast anymore. You can still use your items, and even with 6 adaptability, just run right behind a corner and use your Estus or use your items, really. So honestly, to gameplay, it makes no difference. And it's just another stat to put points into. It's just kind of there. Like, it's not useless. It's just there. And a lot of the challenge with this game is that there are certain stats that you have to put to level 20 in order to progress. Now, you don't need it, but it helps a lot. 20 vigor, 20 vitality, and 20 adaptability is what you'll need. You can survive with endurance, because a lot of people use invincibility frames, which is fine and dandy. Now, there's another mechanic that I don't know, I'm kind of iffy with it, and that's the, oh god, what was it? No, never mind, the attunement mechanic. I thought this was really, really cool and helps a lot, and that is that your speed, like your casting speed, scales off of attunement now, which is awesome. I've been desperately waiting for that. Now, shifting over to magic. What's my point about magic? It's broken. Seriously, be a mage. Just be a mage. Like, there's no if, ands, or buts about it. Just be a mage. Really. The mage, you can kill anything. Hardest bosses in the game, like the Smelter Demon and the Demon of Song can give you kind of hell. Just be a mage. A sorcerer or a cleric. A pyromancer. Pyromancy is still broken in this game, as it was in Dark Souls 1. Or a hex build, which hexes, you're going to use Great Resonant, whatever, anything. All the Great Resonant series, which uses souls, which you can get a shit ton of. And even then, you don't really need it. However, they do lose a lot of damage. And you're going to be using Dark Orb, which is just, you get 11 of those. 12 if you have a certain faith and intelligence requirement. And you can just get more, because it's the most common basic set of hexes to get. And fire and dark skill off of both intelligence and faith, which is kind of cool. It's a lot more noticeable in dark weapons and in hexes. In pyromancy, not so much. Well, the faith requirement, not so much. The intelligence you can notice a little bit, but you can notice it. And the most broken out of all of these is the Hex build. Only because the Great Resonant Soul does tremendous damage. Like, you can 3-shot the Smelter Demon with it, I'm pretty sure you could. However, they did nerf it in a recent patch, but nevertheless, it's still pretty broken. Strength builds are still useless. Dex builds are still kind of overpowered. But, however, since you can, like, 53 stats, just adaptability, strength, and dexterity. That's honestly what I suggest in order to get past the game, because you can wield both strength weapons and dexterity weapons to their full extent, and upgrade stones, especially slabs, are everywhere. Everywhere. Like, you can farm slabs and they come up, like, almost instantaneously. Like, I went through one area once and got 3 slabs. Really. Well, I've rambled on quite enough, so I think I'll cut the video here. And I'm thinking about just making this 2-part. Now, is this game bad? No. It's not bad. I like it. I really do. Could it use some work? Yes. But I have discovered its purpose. If you have a friend who's kind of interested in the Souls game, but Dark Souls 1 keeps turning them away because it doesn't really invite new players, then just have them play Dark Souls 2, because really, it's perfect to start out as, but not good to stay. So, yeah, this would be a gateway Souls game. I am Colt 45, and as always, keep playing.